Hey, this is Darren from Property Prosperity. Thanks for joining. Today I thought I'd have a bit of a chat. Pretty much every meeting I go to when I'm meeting a new client, they're like, what is it that you do? Like we've been on the internet, we've seen all these different experiences and qualifications, and it just seems like you do a million different things. We don't really understand what it is you actually do. So I thought I'd explain to you my bit of my journey and how I got to where I am and why I think it's important that you do lots of things if you're a property developer. And why you end up being a jack of all trades, and why it looks from the outside that you're doing crazy amounts of different things, but in reality you're just doing one thing, which is being a property developer. Hey Greg, thanks for joining. And yeah, so basically I'll just explain to you my journey. So basically, remember I don't know if you know. Anyway, I used to be an accountant, and then became a property developer, and then started collecting my skills along the way, basically. So what I started realizing is there's just so many things involved in property development, and because it's such serious amounts of cash you're talking about when you're developing properties, if you miss out one of those things and you make a little mistake along the way, it can cost you, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you were just starting out and you've got a limited amount of funds, then that can just totally wipe you out, and you might really find it difficult to start again, if at all, basically. So and then what you start to realize too, even in today's information economy, what I've started to realize is that we've got so much information. You can get really specific information, but what people miss out on is the general information. Trying to work out, how do I piece all this stuff together to understand the big picture? And that's where I've come in, I suppose. I've just been trying to look at the overall big picture and trying to work out how to put a deal together, but a deal that it comes together and works on every different level and sets yourself up not just for that individual deal, but sets yourself up for the long term. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, because they've compartmentalized every part of the process of property development. They're looking at buying the property, or they're looking at doing their finances, or looking at the accounting, looking at selling the property, looking at managing the project, all these different things, because they're all being separate into little different areas, because they're not working together. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They don't have, quite often they don't actually plan on selling the property until the end of the development. They don't even think about it from the start. And basically, before you've even bought the property, you've got to know how you're going to sell it. And before you've even bought the property, you got to know how you're going to manage the development. Before you bought the property, you're going to have to know how you're going to deal with the structure, the tax structure, so you can minimize your tax along the way. So thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining. Yes, maybe you'll get another update on my hair gel next later on. So basically, this is where my journey started. So I used to be an accountant, became a property developer. I just realized along the way that I needed all these extra skills, and so I just learned by trial and error. Basically, I just almost did everything by myself and learned by making lots of mistakes. Fortunately for me, I managed to get through without losing too much money along the way, and made some tidy profits, and started to learn and build on that, and did more and more and more developments before eventually I started helping out other people. And the good thing and the bad thing about being helping other people with developments is, unfortunately, everything's really regulated. So if I wanted to analyze a project, then I've really got to understand what I'm talking about. Not just to make sure I get the numbers right, but also like tax structures and the accounting side of things. Unfortunately for me, because I'm coming from an accounting background, that was something I felt quite comfortable with. But then as you start to, looking at the finance side of things, you have to really have an understanding how that's going to work. If I'm giving advice to other people about finance, then legally I have to have a financial license, or a mortgage broking license, so I can give advice on the best way to organize their finances. Then I was finding I was helping people with selling off their land and selling off their houses and stuff, and I found that unfortunately you have to have a real estate license to be able to do that as well. Then I was giving people guidance on the build process, because they were building all these developments and selling them off. So I just found that then I really had to try and have a good understanding of the building industry, because the problem you get is from the outside looking in, you can watch videos and read a book and go to a seminar and all that sort of stuff, but until you're actually on the inside, hearing from people that work it every day, you never really have a full understanding of, I suppose, the logic of it, but also just the mindset of people who work within that industry. So going along to industry seminars and reading all the industry magazines and journals and all that sort of stuff, you really have a good understanding of, how do I have to think if I'm doing finance? Or how do I have to think as a real estate agent? Or how do I have to think as a property developer? Or how do I think as a mortgage broker or as an accountant? All those different things, you actually have a different mindset. And sometimes I sort of feel like I put different hats on depending on what I'm doing. So So that meant along the way doing crazy amounts of courses, but it's what that has helped me do is really understand it from a deeper level as far as the legislation, which is quite important, because if you're trying to, sometimes you get caught up in the loopholes and get yourself in little troubles for not really anything that's not any your fault. You know, it's just the way the system's been set up. And if you understand how the system's been set up from the ground up, then you can work the system to your advantage, I suppose. And that's some of the things I've developed over time. I've managed to be able to pick up those little loopholes, which can make a difference between a profitable deal and not so profitable deal. And I suppose, you know, at the end of the day, it all comes down to making the deal work, you know. And, you know, from my background as the whole, you know, I did economics at uni and all that sort of stuff, it all comes down to supply and demand. And I think a lot of people, you know, lose sight of all that. They're focusing on just doing a development or organizing the finance or, you know, working out how they're going to sell it. And they don't really understand. They're trying to use people's, you know, the mindset and, you know, using economics, which is all about, you know, marketing and supply and demand. And at the end of the day, if you're going to hang on to a property for the long term, you want to make sure there's limited supply, you know, heaps of demand. Because the cool thing about that, if you're in a situation where that's going to happen, even if you make some mistakes, you know, the market will forgive you, because you know over time, if you can just hang on long enough, if there's plenty of demand, not much supply, the market's going to go up. And even if you've made a mistake, you've got the benefit of the market coming up and forgiving that mistake, and then you can live another day and you can try it all again, basically. And that's where experience comes in, I suppose. The more times you do it, the more you get to do it, and the more experience you can take on to the next deal. And so for me, because I've done so many developments and so many deals and involved with so many clients, a deal for me is so much less risky than a person that's just starting out. And that means because I can, you know, generally take on deals which are a little bit more risky than your average person, and even though they're not as risky for me, that means my deals are a lot more profitable than they would be for your average person. So, yeah, and then when I'm working with clients, because I can remove a lot of that risk, you know, when you can take out the risk, then you're opening up to potential gains that otherwise wouldn't be available, I suppose. So that's where, you know, the benefits coming with a jack of all trades. I know it sounds like I do crazy amounts of things, but really you have to understand all these things to make the deal work in a whole, I suppose. Because if you miss one of those things with developments, because you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if you miss one of those deals, it's $100,000, you know, profit or $100,000 loss, and for a lot of people that can be the end of them, really. So hopefully that's made sense, everyone. Thanks for joining Scott and Gregory and Chris. And yeah, if you think someone is thinking about getting into development, yeah, probably my advice to them is probably try and stand back from the deal. Try and, you know, obviously think of the individual things you're going to plan for as far as you're doing a development, but then stand back and just say, does it make sense? Does this whole thing I'm doing make sense? And, you know, really that's where experience comes in. You start to get a bit of a gut feel of you know, doesn't seem to work or doesn't seem to work, and that's where experience comes in. And yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I know it seems a bit esoteric, and I know it seems a bit weird, but at the end of the day, you know, you've got to go with your gut. And the good thing about the more experience you get and the more knowledge you get, the better your gut feel comes, I suppose. And I suppose that's something that everyone can come with time. So my advice to people is just get out there and just do it. You know, the more developments you do, the better you're going to get. And so, you know, if you want any advice, if you've got any questions or anything struggles you're dealing with, feel free to put a comment or a question in my comment box, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions I can. And if you think someone will like this or find this useful, click on the like button or click on the share button. I look forward to talking to you guys next time. Bye, guys.